Good evening, South Africa. My name is Luyolo Mpiti Mulweni Sanbonani Aunt, and welcome to our live broadcast. I am standing live just outside City Hall here in Cape Town, where the President has delivered the very first State of the Nation address of the Government of National Unity. Now, tonight we'll be hearing from DA Federal Leader and his initial reactions to the President's speech, but we'll also be joined by DA members of Parliament who will also be giving us some of their initial impressions. Now, before we go forward, please make sure to like and share with your friends and family and make sure that they follow the conversation. But right now, though, I am joined by the DA Deputy Chief Whip in Parliament, Baxolile Notata, as well as Dr. Mark Burke, who is our spokesperson on finance. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to our broadcast. Baxolile, I'll start with you. What is your initial reaction to the State of the Nation?
Thank you so much, Leol, and good morning and good evening to all of our viewers at home. Look, I think the most important thing is that we found DA policy coming strongly through on the President's address, especially around economic growth and jobs. Even though that is the case, but we do think that there's some sense of urgency that needs to come through them. It was also important to make sure that some of the highlights that were given are the work that the DA is already doing in government to enhance economic growth and jobs, the visa regime that is ran in the Department of Home Affairs that is making sure that we attract more and more tourists to come to South Africa to contribute to the economy. The investment in terms of turning South Africa into a construction site and leveraging the public-private partnerships that are available to make sure that we create jobs and we turn this country into a construction site. We do think that there must be certain things that is fast-tracked, though, by 12 months within the same year to make sure that we give concessions for our ports to be much more efficient in exporting things, particularly in the Richards Bay and Cape Town port, and also the freight rail that transports the goods that we make in the country to get to those particular destinations so that we can able to get them out of the country. More importantly, though, we need to stay away from red tape and policies that can drive away investment. And we do think that we'll leverage our influence in the Government of National Unity to make sure that the President stays far away from those, but open that up for us to enhance economic growth. The key word in the whole conversation today, economic growth and jobs. That's what South Africans need to lift themselves out of poverty.
Now, back staying with you, we heard the President speak about an infrastructure investment, over 100 billion rand that will be invested. And can you just speak to us more about that and what that means for South Africans who are watching that and who are looking for jobs in our country?
Look, when we talk about infrastructure investment, it's what we're really driving. Minister of Public Works is saying, let's turn South Africa into a construction site. And what that does, it means more and more people are going to get access to jobs in South Africa. That's exactly what it means. We need to make sure we invest in South Africans so that they can lift themselves out of poverty into economic opportunity. And ultimately, that is what it means for them.
All right, we are now crossing to John right now to hear his reaction. We'll be back.
Home Affairs, the ECD, basic education, and how we're going to turn the economy around. But I think we need to act with a lot more urgency. I think what we need is urgency. We've only got 4 years left as the Government of National Unity. And at the end of that 4 years, we've got to be able to show jobs. So I want to see a lot more urgency on concessioning of ports, bringing in private sector so we can get our agricultural products to the world a lot quicker. We can expand. Both the horticultural and citrus industries have told me very clearly that they can quadruple their production over the medium term if they have reliable ports that are going to get their products to market. So I think what South Africans have seen, we've got diagnosed the problem, the President's correctly shown where the focus is, and I think we now need to move with the urgency that's required. And I think that I would like to have seen a little bit more of those deadlines this evening around when we're going to achieve those things. But we're going to be unpacking a lot as ministers during the course of the debate, and I hope to be able to commit, certainly from my department, some key deadlines that people will be able to hold me accountable with.
My thanks to the leader.
Sona, you're happy with the speech?
Welcome back, and as I've said, we are live outside the City Hall where the President has just given his State of the Nation address under the Government of National Unity. Now, Dr. Mark Burke, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here. What is your initial reaction to the President's speech?
There are a couple of positives. One of the things that we heard coming out strongly here is a focus on the privatization of certain sectors of our economy. So there's the transmission of electricity, which will be privatized. At the same time, we're talking finally about how Transnet will operate with either private parts of the rail or either private and public partnerships, and where it makes sense then of course for the state to still own portions of the rail. But this is crucially important for two reasons. Transnet is costing us a lot of money for the fiscus, but it's also constraining a lot of economic growth. One of the negatives that I saw coming out of this speech is that there wasn't enough focus on our debt service cost. Now, just to stop at this jargon term for a moment, debt service cost, if you earn 10,000 Rand a month and you have to pay 2,000 Rand of that just to pay your credit cards before you even get to buy food, that's a problem. That is the situation for every 10,000 Rand earned in South Africa.
Now, Mark, just to stay on that point, what would you say are the quick wins for South Africans who are sitting at home and saying, well, we want to know what the DA has been able to contribute in this government of national unity? Just 3 short things that you can give us.
Absolutely. I think the first one is there's a real focus now on jobs. And while we're trying to create jobs, we're doing that by focusing on infrastructure spending. You have to understand, in the past, governments in South Africa focused on consumption spending, meaning we're buying things that we're consuming in the year that we're buying them, whereas now we're finally building for 20 years ahead. So if we spend on infrastructure now...
Well, we're heading back to John. We'll be back.
Glad the President's focus this evening was on economic growth and jobs. That's why we're part of the GNU, and I'm very proud of the fact that many of the DA Minister's achievements to date have been highlighted and some of their plans have been expressed this evening. But I think what we need is urgency now. The Government of National Unity has got 4 years left to be able to really move the needle on economic growth and jobs. And so I would like to see a lot more urgency on port concessions, on rail networks being opened up so we can get our products around the country and to the ports and harbours. In the agri-space alone, we've got huge opportunities to expand our production, but we need ports that are working to get them there.
John, just briefly before we cross to Ayanda, an issue that you actually really like a lot is infrastructure.
Yeah.
Billions of rands have been unlocked in that regard. There will be the biggest bridge or tallest bridge in Africa in the Eastern Cape that will be built.
Yes, absolutely. And this is another great thing. We're moving from consumption spending to spending on economic infrastructure that's going to give a return, and that has to be good for the country. But again, with all these projects, we need to make sure we are delivering them on budget, on time. We can't sit in 4 years' time and have some of these projects still languishing on the draft board. We need to have them up and running so we can show the people of South Africa this is what your government has delivered over the last 4 years.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
They're talking about it.
Good evening and welcome back to our live broadcast. As I've said, we are live outside City Hall where the President has delivered the State of the Nation address. Still with me is Dr. Mark Burke, our DA spokesperson on finance, as well as Bakolile Notata, our DA Deputy Chief Whip in Parliament. Now, go back to our conversation. We heard earlier this week that we have received a very great win with the NHI, where we heard that now medical aids will not be part of the cut-off with NHI. Can you tell us more about that?
Look, I think it's important for people to understand that Democratic Alliance believes in universal access to healthcare regardless of your economic status. And it was very important for us to have that important win this week to make sure that we protect the private medical aids that people have access to, but also leverage the partnership with the private sector to make sure that the public health system is actually functional. I mean, from a personal perspective, I lost my mother from a public health perspective when she went for some medical procedure in hospital and actually never made it back. So it's important for us to leverage the system that already works of the private sector and not take away what works, so that we're able to leverage that and put it together so that when people go to hospitals, they don't go to die, but they actually get health and actually live.
Mark, before I let you go, I just want to bring you in here back on jobs. South Africans at home want to know from here going forward, how are these jobs going to materialize after the speech? Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. When we chat to people in the industry, they're saying to us that they've got the ability on one coal line and one iron ore line to add up to 8 million tons of capacity in a year. But they can't because it's getting stuck at the ports, and so they can't ship it, and so they hold back on the... What that practically means for people at home is we have got jobs. We are simply constraining our economy by not fixing Transnet. Similarly, when we've got land sitting fallow in cities, we're losing out on economic opportunity to build housing. I heard the President speak about that tonight, and I do think it'll be very beneficial to people sitting at home, living closer to centres of economic activity. So we are very optimistic that while the DA is in government, while we're able to keep the radicals outside of government, we will be creating jobs by allowing the private sector to do what it does best, which is grow the economy.
And that's it with our colleagues, members of Parliament, Dr. Mark Burke, spokesperson on finance, and of course the DA, Bakolile Notata, the DA Deputy Chief Whip in Parliament. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. Now, as I've said earlier, we will be hearing from various DA members of Parliament tonight, but key tonight is to hear John's initial reaction to the President's State of the Nation speech. Right now, though, we are going to see if we can really find John to link to him.
Mia? Wil gou hierso?
Welcome back. We are now still here outside the City Hall in Cape Town. We are joined by Mam Bridget Masangu, the chairperson of social development in Parliament, and of course someone who's truly been championing social development issues across our country. We know in our country that people are facing really severe economic conditions, struggling to put food on the table. Mampi, just to ask you, how do you feel about the speech tonight, and how do you think it's going to affect the millions of South Africans who are really hoping that this speech translates into something for them?
It was very encouraging and actually exciting to a certain extent to hear that the President was on the point that the Democratic Alliance focal points have been, which is creating jobs and economic growth, because that is what, as you said in your intro, that so many people are in dire situations in terms of their economic status, where people go to bed hungry. So if jobs can be created and if the economy can grow, we will see people less and less depending on social grants, but being able to work and to look after their families, because that is the situation that we are facing at the moment. So the entry of the Democratic Alliance into the GNU and the work, the inroads that have been made by the Democratic Alliance ministers in creating jobs, in making sure that the economy grows, is an exciting affirmation by the President himself, as he was one by one just mentioning the work that has been done by the ministers who are the DA ministers in the GNU.
Well, Mam Bridget, we'll be back. We are going to cross over now to DA Federal Leader, who's still giving his initial reaction. We'll be back.
That we would assist with whatever we can to repair these. There is nothing in South Africa's interest to be at odds with the United States. 71% of our foreign direct investment, majority of it comes from the US and the EU. Huge opportunity for South African products abroad. We can't afford to just simply wave America away. It is the largest economy in the world, and we need to be selling to them, and we need to be trading with them, and we need to be talking to them. So I think it's now time for cool heads to prevail. I think we need to get a team over there as quickly as possible to Washington, and we need to be able to explain to him what the GNU is doing in order to address it and to try and address some of the concerns that they may have. When you have conflicts like this, they're often a huge opportunity to actually mend fences and actually solidify relationships. And so we mustn't waste this situation right now, and we must make absolutely sure that we use it to our advantage to be able to go forward. Thank you. Hello, radios. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Steenhuisen,
Yes.
When we spoke to one of your spokespersons this morning, Karabo, she told us that the DA had an opportunity to make submissions in what contributed to the final piece of the State of the Nation address. When the President was speaking, we did see you nodding a few times. Does the Sona reflect what the DA submitted?
Yes, I'm very proud to say that there's a large part of what the DA submitted is reflected this evening. And I'm very proud of the work that DA ministers are doing in government to help create jobs and grow the economy. From Leon Schreiber's digitization in home affairs, to Savira Gahube's moves around ECD, to Solly Malatsi's work on digital technologies, to the work on the environment, what we're doing in agriculture. And I'm very pleased about that. But I think what we missed a little bit tonight was the urgency. We've only got 4 years left as the GNU to be able to really demonstrate to South Africans that we've created jobs, grown the economy, and invested in infrastructure that's going to lead to economic development and to beat poverty and reduce the cost of living. So I think there's a greater urgency that's required, and certainly as ministers now, it's going to be up to us to go out and unpack how we're going to get to these things, giving deadlines, making sure we're delivering these projects on time, on budget, and that they're able to achieve the objectives that we've set out. It's not going to help us in 2029 if we go to the electorate and we're sitting with many of these projects still on the drawing board. And I think that's where the urgency is required. We only have 4 years. If the GNU is going to hold the rational centre in South African politics, we've got to use these next 4 years. We don't even have a week to waste. We've got to be on top, fixing the ports, concessioning the ports, fixing our rail, making sure that we're removing red tape and obstacles to small business development and entrepreneurs, making sure we're providing the economic input that's required to make the economy grow. And I think that we heard a lot of I think that the President's diagnosis now was perfect. The focus was absolutely right on growth and jobs and beating poverty. But we need, I think, to have far more urgency, a sense of urgency about what is required of us, all of us, to make this GNU work and to make sure it delivers to the people of South Africa.
Speaking on the timeline, there's a lot of specifics, particularly around your ministers, Sibilo Korube, Public Works, Home Affairs, that are actually on a specific timeline. Are you confident in them to be able to deliver on those KPIs?
I'm very confident that if they're given the free hand and the support that they need within their departments, that they will be able to achieve those and make sure that they are delivered on budget, on time, and achieving the objectives that they need to achieve. So I'm very confident in that. I'm very proud of the work they've done already. You've heard tonight how 90% of the backlog is now cleared on visa applications, ID applications. Backlogs are being cleared. And if you're given the tools to do the job effectively and you're given the ability to have free hands to do that, there's nothing and nobody that can stand in your way of achieving those objectives.
Just lastly from my side, before the cabinet report, there were some tensions in the GNU. Have we resolved those issues? Are we now fine with the President and everybody?
Well, I think that any coalition, whether it's one in South Africa or one in Europe or one in South America or anywhere else in the world, is different parties coming together. And I think the GNU's gone through a settling place. It's been 7 months. There have been some areas where there's been some unhappiness, and particularly the way things are managed. I've had a very constructive meeting with the President last week during the Lekgotla. I think measures have now been put in place to try and ensure that we manage the political management of the GNU in a far better way. The leaders of the parties this afternoon were consulted on the speech this evening, and I think that is a welcome step. And I certainly would welcome far more frequent meetings of the leaders so that we can manage the politics and try and take some of the disagreements and issues that we're having with each other behind closed doors so we can hammer them out and find the compromises we need, because compromises are going to need to be made. No party has got 51%. The ANC can't get everything they want, but the DA too can't get everything we want. but we should all be able to get something of what we want. And I think that's where the beauty of the compromise comes in, and I think that is where the leaders sitting down more regularly and developing mechanisms to be able to manage differences within the coalition are going to be essential.
Thank you so much.
Just one question from my side. The international pressures that we've seen play out over the last few weeks, the Trump administration, just your take on the president's response to some of the international global affairs.
Well, I think it was very clear the president set out what our international obligations are in terms of human rights and the like. However, I think that there are very important relationships that we have with trading partners around the world. And America has been a long-standing ally of South Africa. It was very active in the anti-apartheid movement and in assisting to bring freedom in South Africa. It is very clear there are some issues that have now arisen between our two countries. And I don't think there's anything in it for America or for South Africa to end up in a protracted battle with each other. And I think that's why I welcome the president's initiative now to send a delegation to Washington. He announced that this evening, and to other capitals to explain to them what the GNU is doing to deal with any misconceptions that may have arisen. And it's very clear from some recent tweets that there are some misconceptions about South Africa, and to sit across from the table and find common ground. I think that every crisis presents an opportunity, and this is a crisis, and we mustn't waste this crisis and turn it around into a position where we'll be able to solidify our relationship with America. We can't wave America away. 71% of our foreign direct investment comes from America and Europe. We can't simply pretend that their market doesn't exist. They're the largest economy. They're important for us for agriculture, manufactured goods, vehicles. We can't just wave them away. Let's sit around a table with them, explain to them what we're doing, clarify any misconceptions, and see how we can work to firm up the relationship. We've got a G20 this year. They're due to take over the G20 from us. It means we have to work together. The G20 is not a South African creation. It is a multilateral forum. And I think that it would be poorer if America is not participating in that G20. And I'd very much like to see them here for the G20 so that they will have the voice at the table, and they will eventually then take the work of this G20 forward in their G20 as well, just as we've taken the work forward from previous G20s into ours. And so Winston Churchill always said, jaw is better than war. And we need to get over there now and start speaking to our allies and trying to reaffirm these bonds in a way. Look, we're never going to agree on everything. We will disagree on some things America does. They will disagree with some things we do. But we need to have a forum where we can have honest conversations with each other. And I think that's where the problem has set in over the last few years. And I think we're talking past each other. And I think the sooner we get around a table to discuss these matters, I think the better it's going to be for both America and South Africa. They're strategically important for us, but we're also strategically important from a minerals perspective, but also from our position in Africa. And I think that it's important that we repair those relationships as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, South Africa, and welcome back. As we've heard, growth and jobs are at the top of the agenda. Ma'am Bridget, as we continue our conversation, we heard the President speak about early childhood development. Can you just tell us more what that means to families and mothers out there who are concerned about their kids?
You know, early childhood development, as you know, it moved from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Basic Education. But that does not take away the responsibility that both the portfolio committees or the departments hold to make sure that children are, first of all, in the early years of their lives, they are taught, like the President said rightly, that it is very important for children to be able to learn in the foundation stage in a manner that they can have meaning. And also he mentioned the fact that the registration of early childhood development centers is very important, because if they are not registered, they are not regulated, which means they can do whatever they like. So it is very important, and it was very exciting and critical that that the president mentioned this, because it is a huge challenge at the moment in South Africa, where children are not going to school in the numbers that they should be. And as a result, they are robbed of early childhood development, as it were. And also he talked about the malnutrition, to make sure that children are fed the diet or the nutritious food that they need at that early age as they develop, cognitively and in other ways. So early childhood it's a foundation, in fact, of what we can expect from our children and our youth going forward. And so it is a very critical point for the president to mention. And also we know now that the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Gwahobe, has actually been very vocal in making sure that she will be tracking, her department will be tracking the development of children from as early as early childhood development.
Now, Ma'am Bridget, we staying on that, we've seen, vulnerable South Africans who are really relying on this government of national unity to really alleviate their lives. We now know that we have DA ministers and deputy ministers. What does this mean for vulnerable South Africans who are looking to this government of national unity for hope?
The government of national unity has brought hope, should be bringing hope to a South African who is young, who is at an employment stage, but he's not working. Because if you hear things like we are turning South Africa into a construction site, that means jobs. If you hear that we are going to be working hard to get finance for the subsistence farmers so that they can, transform from being just subsistence farmers, but to be commercial farmers as well, that means jobs. And also when you hear that the fisheries are going to be opened for the small fisheries, for the small fishers, and I heard a mention of a 36% of that opportunity, the increase of what the small fishers can actually have access to, that means jobs. It means people can have food on the table of their families, something that we are struggling with at the moment. We are having at the moment 30 million of people that are depending on grants of a certain nature. And all these things that were said yesterday by the leader of the Democratic Alliance, but by the president himself. He was one by one articulating what each of the DA ministers are doing, which is going to turn move the needle from people being poor to people being employed, or people opening small businesses. He even spoke about having artisans in our TVETs, which means that people don't have to actually want to go to universities, but they can go to TVETs and get trained and have skills so that they can go out and do work. So it was a very, very encouraging aspect of the State of the Nation address today.
And I think, Ma'am Bridget, also interesting to hear, as we've been saying as the DA, growth and jobs. That's what South Africans need. And this is what we want to be delivered by the government of national unity. I mean, to have DA ministers and deputy ministers in this government means that we are pushing strongly for growth, for economic growth, for jobs, because young people are unemployed. Young people can't find jobs, and that's why it's so fundamentally important for us to really have these ministers. But I wanted to go back, Ma'am Bridget, to what you were saying about economic growth and jobs, and perhaps to expand, because it's not only just young people that need jobs. There's also people within the age bracket of 35 to 45 that also need jobs. And does this speech maybe also speak to those people in South Africa?
It does. I believe that the speech spoke to that, in that, as you know, the people that are getting what we call the social relief of distress grant are people from the age of 19 to the age of 59, because there is no other grant that is covering that. But those are the people that are economically active. So these opening of jobs, creation of jobs through construction of South Africa becoming a construction site, that these jobs that are created by making sure that people get jobs from the investment that are coming in with the opening of the visa system where investors can come into South Africa through tourism, that is saying that it will open jobs for the people, not only the young people, but everybody that is within the employment age in South Africa. So for me, it brings hope that we actually are going to be having a country that has working South Africans, that where South Africans can have dignity, where South Africans who are raising children can actually provide for their children, so that we don't have a situation now where children are at a risk of being malnourished and as a result not doing well in their development at school or in early childhood development.
Well, thank you, Mam Bridget Masangu. It was such a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Now, staying with us on this broadcast, we are joined by DA National Spokesperson Vili. Vili, thank you so much for being with us this evening. I just wanted to ask you, what is your initial reaction to the speech?
I'm so proud, Loyola, can stand here and to say that it is clear that DA policies that we've introduced in this Government of National Unity was at the center stage of the speech. The Democratic Alliance made it clear from day one that we must grow the economy and that we must create jobs. And if you listen to the speech tonight, the President put a lot of emphasis on growing the economy, on accelerating reforms in Eskom and in having the private sector coming in there to assist in the generation as well as the distribution of electricity. We need that to grow this economy. We can't grow the economy if we will have load shedding more and more. We saw in this week that we had load shedding again after more than 300 days. So it remains a real threat. And the only way in which we can solve that is to have the private sector involvement. If you look at the infrastructure development that the President spoke about, Dean McPherson, our Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, has said that he wants to turn South Africa into a construction site. The money that the President spoke about tonight that will go towards infrastructure development is testimony to the hard work that DA Minister Dean McPherson is doing there. If you look at the announcements of the President with regards to the private sector coming in to assist with the freight rail network and our ports, it's very important. Our farmers can farm as hard as they like to, and our manufacturers can manufacture as much as they like to. But if they can't get it to the harbour, or when it's at the harbour, get it out of the harbour and export those products, there will not be economical growth. So it's very important. Those are policies that the DA has been advocating for many years. If you look at the digital transformation that's been spoken about here, it is important to have that. We listened to the speech tonight. Unfortunately, I believe that we need more urgency. South Africa can't wait for all these measures to be implemented. The President must give us timelines, and I believe that that is what we will insist on in this GNU. Give proper timelines. Say where we want to be and when we want to be there, and make it clear to everybody that they must work towards that. So that is part of managing. It's not only to give a target, but also to set a target time and a turnaround time for that. But it's very clear that the DA policies were front and center of what was discussed here. There are things that we've got issues with. I think we've got, from the DA side, we will use our influence to try and persuade the President to move away from any race-based policies. If you look at the Public Procurement Act, as well as the other measures of funding only black people or only a certain portion of our country, it's not right. We must assist each and every South African to obtain a job, and we must move away from race-based policies and make sure that we really transform South Africa so that everybody that lives in this country have got the opportunities to grow the economy together, because that is what we've got to do in order to turn this country around.
Now, Vili, I wanted to touch on also something that the President mentioned on his speech on digital visas, which is a great victory for us under Minister Dr. Leon Schreiber. Can you just tell us more about that?
If you look at the work that Dr. Leon Schreiber is doing as the Minister of Home Affairs, it is day and night different from what we have been used to in the past. We all know the frustrations that you experience when you go and stand in the queue at Home Affairs, whether it's for an ID or a passport or whatever the case might be. And Dr. Leon Schreiber, as the minister, is sorting that out. The backlog in visas that they have cleared, I mean, what an immense amount of work went in there. But it shows you the willingness and the commitment to make things work. I think if Dr. Schreiber will be able to implement what he is busy with, you and me will be able to sit in our homes, apply online for an ID or a passport, and it will be delivered in a few days at your door without you standing in a queue and wasting your time. And it will also streamline the whole aspect. It will make life just easier for everybody.
Now, Vili, we were also speaking with Bakolile earlier on around the NHI and the great victory that happened earlier on this week. Can you just unpack that for us as well?
Leola, we all know that the NHI is a huge issue. There is no money for the NHI. If I want to go to the moon, it's an idea. But if I don't have money to buy a space shuttle, I will never get there. And that is what the NHI is. So the Democratic Alliance is very glad that we've reached an agreement yesterday that private medical aids will be protected. It will remain in place, and we will fight other issues in that. But the Democratic Alliance is very proud again of our policies being center stage in tonight's State of the Nation address.
Now, that was Vili, our DA national spokesperson, but now we are joined by DA federal leader John Steenhuisen. We've been waiting for him. We finally have him. It's so incredible to have you with us tonight, John. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very proud to lead a party whose successes in government were highlighted this evening, and some of the goals were set out very, very clearly. And of course, that we've heard about the achievements in home affairs and basic education and in forestry, fisheries and environment, digital technologies. We've seen the incredible work being done by these DA ministers and deputy ministers, and that makes me very proud. But I do think what was lacking from this evening was a real sense of urgency. I think that we need to understand this GNU has promised South Africans jobs and growth. If we're going to achieve jobs and growth, we've got to move with bold, decisive action. We can't be sitting in 2029 with projects sitting on the drawing board still projects in process and plans in process on officials' desks. So we need to now move with the urgency required to create those jobs so we can get our people working again, to grow this economy so there's more inclusive opportunity for more South Africans, and we've got to build this infrastructure so we have economic activity and generation of economic activity which is going to support that particular thing. So I'm looking forward to our ministers setting out their plans during the response to the Sona, and I sincerely hope that we're able to express a great deal more urgency going forward over this. I'm very proud that a lot of DA policy has found its way into the GNU speech this evening. There was a lot more collaborative approach on the Sona speech this year. I think that's a good sign. But I think what people are looking for are people at home who are sitting unemployed, who are sitting wondering about the future of their country, want to now see these plans urgently executed into action on the ground, and to start to feel it by seeing the unemployment queues shrink, to see it by seeing their businesses flourish, by seeing more entrepreneurs, by seeing the small businesses being freed from red tape. And I think that the urgency that requires is going to have to be what drives us going forward. Otherwise, we're going to all just be talking for the next 4 years.
John, for South Africans who are sitting at the edge of their seats, feeling nervous, not sure what's going on, what is your message to them tonight, this evening, after the speech?
Well, my message to them is very clear, that the growth and jobs agenda is clearly top of mind. And that's the whole reason the Democratic Alliance has gone into the government of national unity, to create jobs, to grow the economy, and to keep the radical elements out of government who very easily would trash our economy and destroy our ability to be able to grow as a country. And so I want to say to the people at home, you've got a party in the Democratic Alliance that's delivering a lot already in government. We're going to do a lot more over the next 4 years, but But we need your help. You need to strengthen our hand. We're only as strong in a government as the votes that we receive. And so if you want a bigger DA and part of national government, you have to give us your votes and strengthen our hand. We're going into the local government elections. If you want to see municipalities working, strengthen our hand. We've shown now at a local, provincial and now national level that we can deliver the change that changes your lives for the better. But we can only do this with your votes.
Thank you so much, John. South Africa, this is the man who's fighting for all of us. And I know, and I'm 100% sure that his work and contribution in the government of national unity is going to be incredible. Together with the ministers and deputy ministers, we are behind them and we are sure that they will deliver a South Africa that we can all be proud of, where we can all economically participate, where we can all have jobs and be able to provide for our families, where we can protect our families and have security and protect our neighborhoods from crime. South Africa, it's been an incredible evening hearing from various members of parliament and of course hearing the live reaction from the DA federal leader John Steenhuisen. My name is Luyolo Mpiti. Diabulela kakhulu. Nguhatebe Mtimkhulu Bongani signing out.
Thanks for watching. All across our beautiful country, people are joining forces to elect the new government that can rescue South Africa. Like and follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Please share our videos with friends and family. Let's rescue South Africa.